Yes, Martin.
Perfect. That's fantastic. So first of all, thank you to ACA for inviting me along to deliver a little bit of a talk today at the Climate Cafe. It's delighted to be here. I am Martin Carle. I am Sustainable Food Coordinator within CFINE, and it says at the bottom of that slide there that my responsibility is for coordinating Granite City Good Food. I'm going to talk to the issue today a little bit about food insecurity, climate change, and sustainable food partnership, and where connections exist between them. So I want to start with a little bit of a reflection in terms of looking at choice. A lot of our interaction with food is driven by choice. We are consumers, and we endeavour to be conscious consumers, as I'm sure many of us around the room try to. So key to a sustainable food system is the capacity to make choice, ideally as sustainable as possible. I've noted some of the considerations that you might make when you're gaining your own food on the screen there. Things such as how to shop. Do you shop once a week and possibly buy in some frozen vegetables, for example, for the end of the week, or do you shop more than once a week? Where do you shop? Do you shop in a supermarket, or do you go to the butcher, the local baker, refilleries, and local delicatessens? And what do you buy from where you go? So do you go to the supermarket and buy everything that you need, or do you split that up? These are all things that we think about when we are consuming. The thing is that household circumstances don't always empower choice. Those who are potentially food insecure or facing a period of food insecurity may not have the luxury of choice in that regard in order to choose that they might want to go to their local baker for one item, go to their local refillery for another item. So they don't have that luxury of choice in every instance. Systemic factors don't always facilitate access. And when I talk about systemic factors, I'm alluding slightly to the concept of the 20-minute neighbourhood, which is the concept that you can access pretty much everything that you need to in terms of food and other lifestyle and basic amenities from 20 minutes walk of your front door. The opposite of that, of course, being food deserts as well, where there is none of that around you. So systemic factors don't always facilitate access in that regard either. Hence, my argument would be that empowering choice and facilitating access is vital to the alleviation of food insecurity and for the creation of a climate sustainable food system. Now, I very much frame this slide in terms of those who are potentially facing food insecurity and the choices that are available to them. But to expand further on the types of choices that we have, these are just some of the accreditations that exist for products. And you'll notice on this slide that not all of them refer to food. For example, Fair Trade, British Red Tractor, MSC certification, Rainforest Alliance certified, these all apply to food, but there are also marks that indicate what we should ideally be buying as conscious consumers in terms of the not tested on animals for products. And sometimes it is the case that these accreditations and these marks come with a premium. And again, what I alluded to in the previous slide is that those who are potentially facing food insecurity don't always have the luxury of choosing these items. So CFINE, the next part I've reflected on choice a little bit, but I want to reflect a little bit on what CFINE does and the kind of things that we do around sustainability, but also around providing food access and solving food insecurity and tackling food poverty. So CFINE very much has sustainability integrated in with its core values. Our core values within CFINE are inclusion, equality, making sure that our work is community-led, ensure that we collaborate and we actively collaborate, that we're enterprising and that we are sustainable, that we ensure that sustainability is part of our core values as well. Sustainability should be something that all communities feel they are able to contribute to and gain from as well. And in some of the following slides, I'm going to break down some of these examples here. In community growing, we've got empowering action around Keep Growing Aberdeen and the partnership work that exists within that, the supportive role that CFINE, as host of Granite City Good Food, took in the Community Garden Festival, and also the work that CFINE does around its tool library to really ensure that there's a tool sharing access there for those that are looking to community growing, and increasing access, increasing food security and tackling social inequality through those actions and through those projects. There's also the role of Fair Share Grampian in empowering communities, and CFINE is the redistribution centre for Fair Share across 7 local authority areas. We'll go into that in a little bit. And fundamentally, access to food. And particularly looking at the pantries, the empowerment of choice that the pantry model gives, and the ethos that there is an environmental aspect to some of the work that through the likes of Fair Share providing access to food provides as well. So there's a bit of a case study on that as well. But it's worth saying that within CFINE, it's not just about food. We also look at focusing on access to free sanitary products, and have done for quite some time. And there's, of course, an emphasis on reusable sanitary products as well, and also supporting organisations such as the Budding Engineers and Retech. Some of you may have noticed that we recently did a collection for the Budding Engineers, for example. The other thing I should add before I move on from this slide is all of these are very project-based, but within operations itself, there's a real sustainable emphasis there, where we can, using e-cargo bikes, for example, or using sustainable transport as well. So just a key point to note there before we move on. So let's first look at CFINE and community growing then. On the right of the screen is my colleague, Rebecca Dunn, who is CFINE's Community Growing Development Officer. And what I really want to reflect on in this slide primarily is the work of Keep Growing Aberdeen, which is an absolutely fantastic partnership project, which started in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, when we were all finding our feet, and when food insecurity became increasingly fragile, food security in general became increasingly fragile, not just in terms of the community growing aspect, that community growing became an increasingly restricted activity, whether you wanted to use community growing as your sort of one exercise of the day, or whether you could do that in the first place. The ethos of Keep Growing Aberdeen was very much about increasing access to growing as activity, and with a focus on priority neighbourhoods and regeneration areas around Aberdeen. And the quote that I've put in italics on this slide is a reflection from the final report of November 2020 for the first year of that project. And it says that growing must be something that all communities can take part in. It's an entitlement because of the associated health and social well-being benefits, which include access to sustainable food, i.e. food security, and pro-environmental behaviours. Organically growing your own food is sustainable and nourishes the soil. In 2020, the Seedling Sharing Project, which provided seed packs for growing to households in priority neighbourhoods, distributed 264 growing packs, which was received incredibly successfully, as the evaluation report alludes. In 2021, the project expanded, distributing 415 first off seedling sharing packs to an increased amount of households, but also by adding in an added level of circularity. So ensuring that people knew what they could do with the food that they'd grown through the provision of 8 as live cooking demonstrations in collaboration with the mixing bowl, and with the foundation of 3 and support to 3 brand new community gardens around Aberdeen City as well. So let's look now at CFINE and Fair Share. So as I alluded to earlier, CFINE is the redistribution centre for Fair Share across 7 local authority areas: Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire, Moray Highlands, Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. Pretty much anything north of the southern tip of Aberdeenshire or the southern edges of the Highlands northwards is the area that we cover. So it's a really, really big area that we cover. We redistribute surplus food, perfectly usable and often a result of over-ordering or under-distributing, or both, from the supply chain of larger companies. Tesco is one example of this, and some of you may have noticed that Tesco did quite a public advertising campaign alongside Fair Share earlier this year. and it looks to empower communities who can make use of the food. It prevents food surplus becoming food waste and empowers community activity, encouraging communities to use the food, but use it as they see best. In 2020, CFINE redistributed 1,314, so just over 1,300 tons of food. And if you equivalent that into the meal equivalent, that's about 3.1 million meals being redistributed, and that surplus being redistributed to communities and empowering community work. Again, much of it in areas that face food insecurity or social inequality as well. So really empowering community action where community action is needed. A great example of some of the redistribution work, and this example comes from the Highlands and quite recently publicised through the Press and Journal as part of the DC Thompson Big Christmas campaign around the Big Christmas Appeal, is the Bradbury Centre, which is a wellbeing hub for vulnerable adults and individuals in Bonner Bridge up in the Highlands. And CFINE contributed the food to this wellbeing hub and ensured that it could have a lunch club, and that could bring communities together, where bringing vulnerable communities together was important. And there's also a social connector there, that not just was the food being used to provide lunch to these individuals, but also that it was empowering them to come together and ensure that they could enjoy company together through several different activities and things like that as well. Another example, more close to home in Aberdeen, of where produce from Fair Share can be used is through the pantry system, and that this is a degree of food support, which indicatively, I've put an example here. An individual or household could pay £2.50 for an annual membership and £2.50 per shop. Pick 10 items, all of those items labelled by value. And on the right of the screen in the picture there, you'll see the stickers, the green and the yellow at the very top of that image. They get to pick a variety of those items, and the shop conventionally represents around £20 in value. So this is food support that provides higher quality items, higher quality in the sense that those facing food insecurity are empowered to make their own choices, plan their own meals. If there's recipes that they require, those can be provided through some of CFINE's additional work as well, and how that can result in greater dignity as well, and greater social connection as well. And as I say, most of the items there are provided by Fair Share surplus as well. Now we get on to sort of my territory, which is Granite City Good Food. As I say, I'm the coordinator of Granite City Good Food, which is Aberdeen City's Sustainable Food Places Partnership. Hosted here in CFINE, it is chaired by Councillor Leslie Dunbar, an Aberdeen City Councillor, and the partnership groups comprise of multiple organisations, all of whom are committed to creating systems change towards a sustainable food system. Now, when I talk about systems change towards a sustainable food system, it's very much driven by this ethos that food is at the heart of some of Aberdeen's deepest and most serious social, cultural and economic issues. And as it's part of the problem, it's really, really important that we put sustainable food at the heart of everything we do in Aberdeen to ensure that it can really be part of the solution. And across social, cultural and economic, we touch on various factors that are relevant to discussion tonight, such as, for example, social isolation, food insecurity, and the climate and nature emergency as well. Food really is a connector of all of those dots, as we will kind of go on to explore in a moment. So here's a little bit of a diagram for us then to look at what Granite City Good Food looks like. On the left of the screen appearing there are the key partners of our steering group. The steering group is sort of the strategic group that oversees the development of Granite City Good Food. We've got Aberdeen City Council, ourselves at CFINE, the Health and Social Care Partnership, NHS Grampian, the Allotment Market Stall, Tillydrome Community Flat, and Robert Gordon University. So a key mix of strategic organisation, community organisation, and ensuring that there's a fine balance there as well. And on the right of your screen, you'll have to forgive me because there's a slight box obscuring that at the moment, is our subgroups. So these are our groups that work on far more focused issues than the steering group does, to ensure that there is systems change being created around these issues. And you'll notice that pretty much all of them touch on issues of social inequality and food security as well. So our food growing strategy implementation group is possibly our newest one. And as part of the Community Empowerment Act, each local authority has to have a growing strategy, and Granite City Good Food as a food partnership takes on the implementation of some of the elements of Aberdeen's food growing strategy. That's Granite City Growing. Food Poverty Action Aberdeen, which is actually a group older than Granite City Good Food, which is a collection again of organisations looking to collaborate and ensure a partnership approach to the alleviation of food insecurity and food poverty. Aberdeen Community Food Network, which again, older than Granite City Good Food, but takes a far more focused approach in terms of food skills and food as a community connector, a social connector. Aberdeen Procurement Partnership, and more. And the and more on that slide is pretty much for anyone that has ever been in any meetings with me. Anything that I discuss in those meetings works towards Granite City Good Food and works towards the strategic objectives, which we'll get on to next. So Sustainable Food Places is a network of approximately 60 active food partnerships across the UK, ranging from Gold Sustainable Food Place award winners such as Brighton and Bristol, right through to brand new partnerships such as a Highland Good Food Partnership and partnerships elsewhere across the UK as well. Partnerships exist to encourage public, third and private sector involvement in creating sustainable food systems change, and that everyone's got a part to play in that. And that putting sustainable food at the heart of local communities and reflecting that with an award structure to recognise achievement, but mostly commitment and bottom-up sustainable food approaches is key there as well. This is the framework that we work to. So we've got 6 key areas, very broad at first look, right from taking a strategic approach to good food governance, right through to building a good food movement, tackling food poverty and increasing access to healthy, affordable food, supporting the good food economy and ensuring that everyone is able to access that, transforming procurement, localizing supply chains where possible, and underpinning everything with an environmental edge as well. If you ask me personally, the climate and nature emergency is a very, very important food issue, and that food is a very, very important issue in the climate and nature emergency. So all of these, whilst they seem separate at first, do link in alongside one another, and everything is underpinned by everything else, if that makes sense. To look at this in a little bit more of an illustrative light. In a truly sustainable food system, these issues, so healthy food for all and food for the planet, which I judge are probably the 2 most relevant for discussion here tonight, should complement each other, ensuring that people and households and communities can access affordable and healthy food, but also by ensuring that that food that is consumed is planet friendly and contributes to the tackling of a climate and nature emergency, preventative of waste, ensuring that there's a degree of circularity there, and ensuring that people know that their food is planet friendly if it is referring to marks before, but ensuring that people can make that choice, as I said at the start. A great example of where that has been witnessed is in the Glasgow Declaration for Food and Climate. This is quite a new declaration, as it was presented at COP26 last month. It feels like last year. Feels like a long time ago. But the declaration, on the screen now are points 4 and 5 of the Glasgow Declaration for Food and Climate, recognising that extreme inequalities are pervasive through the food system and disproportionately affect communities, including people living in poverty. And also there, on number 5, convinced that only a food systems approach, inclusive of all the Sustainable Development Goals, can identify intervention points to accelerate climate action. For context, this Glasgow Declaration was a call by subnational governments to put food on the climate agenda and to ensure that food is discussed whenever climate is discussed. Aberdeen City Council signed this declaration and is very supportive of the work through Granite City Good Food that is taking place around this agenda as well. So that is worth mentioning. The Aberdeen City Council committed to this declaration alongside, I don't have a number in my head, but many other local authorities and subnational governments across the world as well. So to look, and coming towards concluding points here, to look at Granite City Good Food in terms of our track record, we were the 47th member of the Network for Sustainable Food Places in 2017. We were the first to achieve a Sustainable Food Places bronze in 2018, and we're hoping to be the first to gain silver in 2022, the process that I'm currently working on and have several deadlines to meet at the moment. But there are several issues and several activities that connect through social inequality, food insecurity, and climate change that get us there. The Glasgow Declaration for Food and Climate, the Veg Cities campaign, of which I mentioned Keep Growing Aberdeen earlier in the presentation, Granite City Growing, so Aberdeen City's food growing strategy, our first ever community garden festival that was held earlier this year, and prospective work that exists around food and climate that we may be taking part in as we go forward. All of these issues are underpinned by insecurity, social inequality, and climate change, and making progress on that, creating systems change to ensure that we can get there and that we can ensure that this reflects commitment, but also reflects reality, that we're actually taking action to alleviate these issues as well within Granite City Good Food. I do want to insert a little bit of a mindless plug here in terms of the top 3 actions in general that we can be taking around this agenda. So what Granite City Good Food is doing is creating system level change, working to ensure a multi-agency, multi-sector approach to that, and an ambition to recognise the achievement and the work that we're doing, but also the work that is underway, the work that still needs to be done in terms of securing a silver Sustainable Food Places award. What you can do is sign our food charter available on the CFINE website. Behaviour change as well, where possible. Again, where possible, as I referred to earlier, it's all about choice. And again, at the system level, we're trying to increase the amount of choice that people have through partnership. And as you've seen through some of the initiatives that CFINE has, for example. But if you can, think about behaviour change. And if you have that luxury of choice, then use that. And if you or your organisation is working actively around sustainable issues, and if not, why not? Do get in touch and let's get a conversation going about where we can support each other on that as well. So that's it. Thank you very much. Do stay in touch. My contact details are on the screen there. And let me know what you are doing to create a sustainable food system. I think it's important that we get a discussion going around this as well. So absolutely, let's get a discussion going where possible. And thank you so much to ACA for allowing me to speak tonight.